All right, everyone. It looks like we got a full house tonight, so thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Andrew. I'm the program coordinator with the East Colorado SBDC. And if any of you by chance missed week one's presentation, please feel free to email me directly. An email went out today as well as Friday with that link for week one's presentation. So feel free to email me. I'll share my email address in the chat, and I'll make sure to get you a recording of week one's presentation. Thanks for joining us tonight. I know it's late, but thank you so much for joining us here this evening for week two. If this slide will work, we'll get you here pointed to our agenda and our sponsors. We really want to thank the Early Childhood Council and Leadership Alliance for all that they've done for us in putting on this program. We'll have a few presenters today who are part of the Early Childhood Council and Leadership Alliance, and just really want to thank them and the partnership, as well as the SBDC network. Really has been influential in the creation of this program. As you all noticed when you joined us today, you are able to unmute yourself. So I know that was a little bit of a technical difficulty in week one, but yes, today we are going to have the opportunity to unmute yourself. So we really want this to be an environment where you are asking questions and we are learning from one another as well as our presenters. And so as this says, webinars are better when we participate. So if you would like to ask any questions, please feel free to click at the bottom of the bottom of your screen here. You'll have a little wave your hand button, and then we'll be able to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question of myself or of any of the presenters, or feel free to utilize the chat box as well. Myself as well as our team will be viewing the chat box consistently, so any and all questions will be addressed via the chat box here during tonight's presentation. So week two, here is our outline for week two. Coming up here to begin, we're going to have Diane Price speak on the iron triangle. So that'll be for 30 minutes. And then at 6:35, we will have a member of the ECC dive into some financial programs and ECC assistance that is available to you. And then one of our own, Jesse Esparza of the East Coast SBDC, he will be presenting on financial basics at 6:50. Then at 7:20 here this evening, we're going to do a quick break, and I will be breaking everyone out into breakout rooms. So we're going to go into smaller groups here this evening within this Zoom webinar. So we'll really be able to open up conversation and kind of dive into the financial basics that Jesse had presented earlier here in the workshop. And then to finish up this evening at 8 p.m., we will be diving into financial basics part 2, and then wrap up any homework and next steps that are needed here for week 3.
So I just want to say hello and introduce myself.
Hey, well, I think that's a great, that's great. Thank you so much. Last time, obviously with the mute function being disabled, we didn't have the ability to do that. So I appreciate that. Let us know your name, where you're from. If you guys got a quick minute, we can take 5 minutes here real quick and do a quick round of introductions. That sounds great. Sure.
So I'm Ruth Ann McCullum. I'm with the Division of Early Care and Learning, and I'm a lead licensing specialist. So I'm here from the department to answer any licensing questions that anybody might have. So I'm available. I'll probably turn my camera off and mute myself unless somebody has a licensing question, or if I feel like there's something discussing licensing that I probably just need to pitch in and talk about. So feel free to ask me any licensing questions that you might have.
Wonderful. And awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anybody else? Quick intros.
Looks like in the chat we have Lisa from Wiggins. Hi, Lisa.
Awesome, Lisa. Thanks for joining us. Lisa will actually be presenting next week as well for us. So thanks for joining tonight, Lisa. If there isn't anybody else, nobody else wants to break the ice, I will go ahead and introduce Diane Price. She's with Early Connections Learning Centers. Diane Price is the CEO and president of Early Connections Learning Centers, managing the operations of 5 full-day and full-year centers, as well as two school-age sites. To be completely honest, my slide just wasn't big enough to highlight all of Diane's accomplishments and the value that she provides to this industry. So lucky to have her here this evening. And she actually took the time to pre-record a video on us, or for us, on the Iron Triangle. So without further ado, Diane Price, here's her video. And then we actually have the pleasure of having her on the call this evening. So she'll be on later to address any questions from the video. So here we go. And if there are any technical difficulties, please let me know if we have any problems here with the sound or anything of that nature.
Hi, I'm Diane Price, President and CEO of Early Connections Learning Centers. I'm happy to be here tonight and talk with you a little bit about how our organization operates financially and the model we use to bring in the maximum resources and be able to cover our costs. Early Connections Learning Centers was founded in 1897 as the Day Nursery Association here in Colorado Springs. And through the last 120 some years, we've expanded, we've added additional full-day, full-year centers. We have a school-age program. We have a drop-in center at the courthouse. We have a network, a staff family home network. And we just recently opened a program with a charter school on site. So we've tried to look for ways to expand capacity in our community and be able to manage that financially in a very difficult financial model, the model of early care and education. So about 15 years ago, we learned about and met folks from Opportunities Exchange. And through that work we've been doing with them over the last few years, we have begun to model the work we do on something that's called the Iron Triangle. Could you put up the first slide, please? Thank you. Early Connections Learning Centers manages the financial operations for our corporation utilizing this Iron Triangle model, as I said, developed by Opportunities Exchange. And I'm pretty sure you guys are going to get a link to that tonight in this training. The Iron Triangle is based on three things: full enrollment, full fee collection, and revenues that cover the cost per child. Next slide, please. Determining your enrollment is based on your capacity, and there's a variety of ways to look at your capacity. It certainly can be through your licensing. If you're a family childcare home, it's based on if you're a 6+2 or you're a large home. If you're a preschool, if you're based on a full day, full year, a drop-in, whatever capacity you have as an organization. And then your ability to keep your enrollment at that desired capacity. And in maintaining your enrollment, it's important for you to look at your forecasting, your trends, and the marketing timeline that you have established in terms of how you fill slots for your organization. And then you also determine the ages served to establish your ratios based on your licensing, partnerships, demand, or what I like to refer to as the farm team. And when we talk about the farm team, we talk about having spaces in our centers for infants and toddlers to feed into our programs for preschool. In a full day, full year program, children attend pretty much up until the day they start school. And then all those little 4-year-olds that turned 5 move on to school, and you have vacancies in your preschool. When you have an infant toddler program or some form of program prior to going to school, you're able to fill those slots, get them full immediately or very quickly, and then fill your infant toddler slots where there always seems to be a demand. Now, I know infant toddler is expensive, but you have to think about those ratios of infant toddler to preschool. You need to look at your market and your location. It appears that in our world of early care and education, we have a zip code factor. So it looks at what are the needs in the zip code, what can you charge in that zip code, and how do you look at that market. The other thing to look at is your program or your curriculum offered. What kinds of things are families looking for? What kind of curriculum do you offer? What kind of services do you offer? Are you comprehensive in your nature? Do you offer the food? Do you offer an opportunity for families to be engaged in their child's learning? So there's a lot of things about the marketing piece for your enrollment that are critical. And then the thing that I think is really important, and I imagine we'll be talking about this in some other parts of your training, but it's really critical that early care and education programs have a child management system. A good child management system allows you to manage wait lists, forecasting, when are birthdays, get birthday reports, bottlenecks, how you move children into a new classroom from a different classroom. You can do staff scheduling, and you can do assignments. We as an industry have not been that great about our technology, but we have got to move into better systems of technology. And you will be able to see a resource book that was created by the Office of Early Childhood that lists many, many resources, and particularly around child management systems. But I think as we reinvent early care and education as we come out of COVID, we need to reinvent a system that is more sustainable for us and has a better financial model. And the best way to do that is through technology, to be able to manage your data very, very carefully. Next slide, please. Collection policies and enforcement are critical. It's a business decision, not a heart decision. Now, I know we all got into this because we love children. We want to do good things in our community. We want kids to have a good start in life. We want, if you're a family child care home, you might want to stay home with your children and blend that learning that you do with your own children with other people's children. But the hard part is that parents still have to pay. When you go to the grocery store, you don't get to take your groceries and not pay your bill in some way. And so it's very critical in early care and education that we have very good collection policies and enforcement of those policies. And you need to develop those for what's right for you as the provider or the professional business person. And you need to have those checked out by your attorney. But it's critical that you have those in place. You need handbooks, financial documents, and acknowledgements. So if you expect a parent to pay on Friday for the next week of care, then they sign a financial document that says that they will pay on Friday for the next week of care. And then what you need to do is determine what the consequences will be if they don't do that. Is it a warning on Monday? Is it a late fee on Monday? Is it a discharge on Tuesday? Or are you going to let it slide? Because if you let it slide once, you'll let it slide twice, you'll let it slide 3 times, and you'll lose money. You also need to look at the annual rate assessment. Now, typically what we do is we call around. We see what everybody else is charging in our neighborhoods or around our areas. And I would say that you need to base your rates on the quality of your services and what you believe you bring to the profession of early care and education. It is absolutely critical that annually you look at your costs and you assess your rates and you change your fee scale. You don't say, oh, I changed it 2 years ago, I can't change it now. Your costs have gone up, your expenses have gone up. What you need to do is assess your fees, change your fees. And again, I'm going to come back to child management software. You can do automated collections. You can get reports. You can look at trends of payment. You can do communication with families. There's a way for you to build all of these things into that automated system that will help you do your job better. And in most cases, directors of centers or owners of family childcare homes are the business person as well as the teacher and the professional. Maybe it's the director, but you're still the professional business person and you're still a resource to that parent and family. And so it's very, very critical that you have these things in place. You need to determine what your costs are. You need to know what it costs you to deliver a unit of service. Your program service fees, either they're your parent fees or they're subsidies. So your revenue to cover per child cost. It's your program service fees, either what your parents pay, or if you are participating in the child care assistance program, what subsidy pays through your local department. You need to look at whether you can be a member of or choose to be a part of the child and adult care food program. Those are revenues that support you. I mentioned CCAP, low income services. CCAP is money that comes in every single week. You get paid every week for the attendance of your children. And then you have access to quality improvement dollars through Colorado Shines. If you are a rated organization, if you have a rating of any rating, I think above 2, you have access to quality dollars that come through your early childhood council. And the higher your rating, the more opportunity you have for revenue. So if you have a rating of a 3, you get a higher reimbursement rate from the child care assistance program. A level 4 or 5 give you a higher then the 3 rating, and then access to funds from Colorado Shines. Next slide. Thanks. I think the thing that we fall short in as business people is we don't always look at all of our costs and everything that we need to include in determining the cost of what a unit cost is, or how much does it cost you to deliver a unit of service, 1 child per day or 1 child per half day. So the typical costs in centers are salaries, which are the largest part of your budget. They're always going to be the largest part of your budget is your salaries. And what you need to remember is to take into account with your salaries benefits. If you offer any benefits, make sure that you add the cost of your benefits in there. Make sure you think about your workers' compensation costs. Make sure you think about your unemployment costs. You can get that information. Usually your unemployment provider will be able to tell you what your rate will be. You need to think of your FICA costs. Make sure you add your FICA to your salary costs. And then the other thing that I think we forget about with salaries and we forget about in our budgets is turnover. So there's a high cost of turnover in early care and education. There's the hard costs, the background checks, the screening, fingerprinting, all those kinds of things. And then there's soft costs. Every time a new person starts, you have to retrain. You have to rebuild your team. You have to think differently about how you integrate those people. So remember to build in some onboarding. What kind of time is it going to take for you to onboard a new person into your organization, into your center? And then and you need to take into account your insurance. So what are your insurance costs going to be? And technology. What's it cost you for technology? Because that's going to become even more important now than it ever has been in terms of the work that we do. And then for your supplies, you need to think about your food costs, your program. What's it cost you in your classroom supplies? Do you allocate a certain amount per child? How do you determine what you spend in terms of your operations? In your occupancy, I'm going to go back a minute to occupancy. Some of us may own our buildings, some of us may lease our facilities. And so you need to take into account what your leasing costs or what your owner costs are, maintenance, taking care of your building, whatever those costs that you incur. And then with supplies, I talked about food, I talked about program, and now we have health and safety. PPE, what's it going to cost you to have masks for your staff? What's it going to cost you to have a supply of masks for children who forget their mask? What's it going to cost you for bleach, for cleaning, for all the things that have to happen that we're doing, that we've always done a lot of, but we're doing much more now in terms of our routine care and health and safety in our classrooms. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about family child care home startups, and I think everything I've talked about relates to family child care homes or centers, but the costs are going to be different. So we have a network of staff family child care homes, and we see a couple of things that we've been doing. We've been doing this for about 20 years. So there's potential startup costs, typically about $10,000 to do inside and outside. So how you're going to set up the inside, materials, supplies, the equipment you need, outside equipment, maybe some of the modifications you have to make to your property if you're a family child care home, about $1,500 on training, paperwork, insurance, and then you have annual costs that take place for you. And one of the things that we forget to do is build in a salary for yourselves. Make sure that you take into account how much money you would like to earn. And we would suggest to you that you put in at least a minimum of $45,000. And that's often overlooked, or it's not planned as an expense. And you really need to build that into your budgets and into your estimated costs. You can probably, other estimated costs maybe for a year, about $18,000, maybe about $1,000 a month for food. Depends if you have a small home, you have a large home, if you're part of the food program, something like that. Your home maintenance and your upkeep, we suggest about $2,900, equipment about $1,700, and training about $200, plus some extended training that you might need. Your next presenter is going to be talking about determining some costs. So you need to think about your unit cost if you're a center or a home. I talked about this a minute ago. What does it cost you to deliver a day of care? And that's going to help you determine setting your fees. That's going to help you determine enrollment. So let's say an enrollment, let's say you have a center and your classroom is licensed for 20 kiddos, but you decide that you want to be part of, you have a contract with the Colorado Preschool Program for CPP, only have 16 kids in a classroom. So what does it cost in that classroom to serve 16 kids versus 20 kids? So you have to take into account the costs of quality. So these are all factors that build into this, and I'm going to be with you in a few minutes just to answer some of your questions that you might have about the things I've talked about and share with you some resources. Thanks, and see you in a minute.
Awesome. So thank you so much to Diane for that. I'm going to share the link for that video as well in the chat. Before we do...
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Killen. I have my own medical practice, and I've been...
Sorry about that. Okay. Before we get to Diane, I am going to just briefly pass it to our next video. It is a short, quick video from the ECC, just on some opportunities and financial assistance that is available to you as a provider. So real quick video, and then we'll pass it to Diane for questions on the Iron Triangle.
Hi everyone, I am Suzanne Gallegos and I am the Assistant Director of Early Care and Education Services with Will County's Early Childhood Council. We recognize that all of the councils across the state have different and unique funding streams that they can offer their childcare providers, as well as programs that they can offer them. Here in Will County, we do offer grants through the Office of Early Childhood, which does include the Colorado Shines Grant and different funding and programs that are offered through the Preschool Development Grant. We also are in partnership with our local Department of Human Services to offer funding to providers who are going through the licensing process. And that does include business and marketing training for them to get started. We also are in partnership with our Department of Human Services, and they offer the CARES Act funding, which is for childcare providers who have a contract for the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program. We also have funding available through Temple Horn and Buell to offer our BASS and PASS trainings, which BASS is our Business Administration System training, which is for our home childcare providers, as well as the PASS is the Program Administration System, which is for our childcare center directors. These two trainings are both pretty good basic starting points for training to get your business plans together, but working with your small business development centers are going to be your best bet to get some in-depth training, and we love to partnership with those guys so we can get our childcare providers that necessary training. To find out more about what we do here in Weld County, you can visit our website, which is unitedway-weld.org, or please give me a call. I can be reached at 970-353-5300. And also, if you want to find out more information about all the councils across the state of Colorado, visit the ECLA's website to find out just what we do as councils. There's so much that we do and that we can do, and we would love to definitely bring it to all of our providers. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Awesome. So thank you so much to Suzanne Gallegos. She's the Assistant Director for Early Care and Education Services for Weld County. So thank you so much for that video. And now, as I said, I'm going to pass the mic back to Diane. She's going to be going through any questions that any of you have now at this time over the Iron Triangle. So feel free to fire those away in the chat, or go ahead and unmute your mics now with any questions for Diane. Diane, just making sure you can hear all of us and your mics.
I can hear you. You guys, you need to put me on the spot.
That's right.
I know it's late. See how sharp I am at 6:30 on a Tuesday night. You're easy.
Hey, Diane, this is Lisa. I'll ask you one.
Okay.
When people are completing the Iron Triangle, what do you find, two-part question. One is the most challenging for them to complete, and two, what they find from completing it the most beneficial afterwards.
I think the place we mostly fall short in early care and education is really understanding a true cost of care. What are all the components, and how do we assess that unit cost, or what it costs us to deliver a unit of service, that day of service for a child? And I think that's sometimes where there are hidden costs that we don't think about. There's overhead that we don't allocate appropriately. So if you have a center and you have multiple classrooms, you have a director, then it's important for you to allocate some of that director salary across all those classrooms so that you cover that as part of your overall cost. And the other thing I think is that we underestimate our value. We tend to not charge the way we should charge. I've heard people say, we've done some training, we use the BAS and doing some training with family childcare homes. And someone said, well, I raised my fees 2 years ago, my parents can't afford it. Well, have your food costs gone up? Have your supply costs gone up? Have your utilities gone up? Has care of your home or your grounds gone up? So we have to take those things into account. And I don't think we should be ashamed to ask for what quality costs or what our programs cost. And I think we undercut ourselves sometimes in that and underestimate what it really costs to deliver a service. There's going to be a gap, and we have to figure out, you have so many resources through your early childhood council. Holy cow, look at all the stuff that is available to you all as professionals in your community to get some support. I think tapping into those help you look at your program fees as well as what else does it take to fill that gap between the costs and what families pay.
You did get a shout out in the chat. Someone said, amen to that.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Lisa. Anybody else have anything come to mind? Diane's a great resource, so definitely want to make sure we answer any of your questions now.
So Diane, I have a question. My name is Jesse Esparza. I'm actually presenting later. One of the things that I have found in terms of all of the financial areas in the child care industry is that there are some very limited management data applications, and it seems real difficult for a child care provider to take a day of delivery multiplied by 200, and because there's so many seasonal and there's so many peaks and valleys to those 200 days. What do you recommend? How does that really, and how can it work without such a good resource like a management system?
So one of the things that we've done, is we certainly look at historical data in terms of where our enrollment falls. What are our averages? What's our enrollment? We talk with our enrollment department about where we think we can maximize our enrollment. We engage everyone in that conversation. If any of you are teachers, I'm going to apologize right now for what I'm going to say. Teachers don't want their classrooms full. Directors want their classrooms full. And I think the reason for that is that because of the way our ratios are set up in our state, let's say that we have a classroom of 16, the ratio is 1:8. You have 9 children, there's 2 teachers. You have 10 children, there's 2 teachers. So I'm gonna get 2 teachers whether I have 10 or 16. And so, sometimes we say, well, we can't take any more kids. And I think we have to think about the benefit we bring and how we manage those kinds of things. So I think that's a critical piece. So we look at those kinds of averages and what we've been able to see over our trends, our data trends. But the other thing we look at is, Jesse, we don't budget we're open year round. So we don't budget for 52 weeks. We budget for 49 weeks. And we budget for 49 weeks because we know we're going to project our revenue for 49 weeks because we know we're not going to be at our maximum enrollment every single day, every week of the entire year. You're going to have the ebbs and flows. You're going to have times when slots are open for a few days. You may have that time that I mentioned when kids start to school, you've got vacancies in your preschool while you're rebuilding your capacity. So to budget for 52 weeks of revenue, I don't think is the best way to go. It'd be great if we could do that, but I think it's important to think about what are you actually, when you're looking at this. We budgeted last year for I think we budgeted for 50, and this year with our finance director, we took it down to 49, particularly because of COVID. We've had such fluctuations with our enrollment.
And Diane, it looks like we do have some questions in the chat. I'll just read the first one. Is there a Colorado industry average for per child costs?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that for our organization, our costs our per child costs are fairly high, and they're high because we have blended a lot of money. We have partnerships with one of our school districts for Colorado preschool program slots. We have partnerships, so we have to meet the teacher-child ratios for CPP. Then we have a partnership with our Head Start grantee. So we have to meet the ratios for our Head Start performance standards. So our infant rooms have 8 babies and 2 teachers and a floater because we've got to cover that full day. You're allowed to have more than that by child care licensing. So our infant costs and our toddler costs are significantly higher because our ratios and our numbers are much lower. And we are having conversations at the state as we begin to plan for the universal pre-K. Yay on passing EE, woo! So as we begin to do this planning, how do we maximize our standards? How do we unify our standards in our state so that we can maximize our revenue?
Lisa, this is Lori. I'll jump on the video. Diane, I will put in the chat. I need to just take 5 minutes and look for it, but Jen and I did a project and we do have a number for the state of Colorado for an average cost. So
okay.
it could be a benchmark, whether it's right or wrong, at least it's something. So I'll put it in the chat and I'll put the reference material if anybody wants to dive in to that.
Great,
okay.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks for that work.
Thanks, Lori. All right, next question in the chat is what % of capacity should they budget for, or the % of capacity should they use to divide monthly costs?
So if you're a center, I can speak to the center. So I sent a sort of a slide. I don't know if Andrew's going to use it tonight or not. You certainly don't have to. You might look at it another time. So if we have a classroom that can have 10 infants and 10 toddlers and 17 preschoolers, we might build our costs on 9 infants because I may not have 10 the entire year. And so I'm going to take a look at that because whether I have 10 infants or 9 infants, I still have to have those teachers and I have to pay those teachers and they're going to come to work whether children come or not. And so, that's going to be part of that. But I think you need to look at your historical data. What are you looking at? What is your enrollment numbers? What have your classrooms been running? Can you look at an average? Can you look at trends for your business, your community, your zip code, your families? And so using, what we use may be different. We serve a lot of subsidy families. And so they tend to have a few more days off than families that are paying the full because it just varies. Different things vary. This year is a fluke year. Who knows? This year, who knows what it's going to cost? Holy cow. But in a normal year, looking at your data and looking at your trends and then making those decisions or based on what you've got, and then making sure that you're allocating expenses across all classrooms. So are you allocating rent or building improvement, or are you allocating, there you go. So this is not one of our centers, but it's a form we use. And so we allocate based on the number of children in the classroom. And then for this one, there's 3 preschool classrooms. There's 15 children in one, 16 in another, and 17 in another. And those were just random numbers we plugged in. And then we had 2 school age programs. So let's say that there's 2 rooms, 30 kids, 15 each. You're gonna have 60 school agers. You plug in your salaries for those teachers assigned to that room. Then we have floaters, or you may have team teachers that are hired by each center that move around and help support. So we just allocate those based on a percentage. So our total costs for our floaters are $78,000, and we've allocated it 15, what percentage is 15 children in pre-1 of our total 108? We've taken that percentage and allocated that to that classroom for floaters. We don't just say that floater's going to be there all the time. We do the same thing for our administrative staff, the director and the admin support. We allocate across based on those percentages. And then your taxes are just what on those salaries. Those are your actual things on those, your actual assessment of taxes to your salaries. And then, so then you look at programs. So for education and instruction, we have a formula. We have a dollar figure we allocate per child per year based on the average enrollment of that classroom the previous year. And so that's how we budget for that. The same for food and then your other program costs. So you look at your total costs, you look at your direct, so you have your total direct costs, which are your salaries and your program costs. And then you might have, you have center overhead costs. That's where you're going to put in your taxes, your benefits. You're going to put in any of the things that are allocable, any things that are used by the whole center are going to go in your center costs. And we allocate those again by percentage. So what percentage are the number of children to the total children you serve? Then for our organization, we're a shared service. And so we allocate our corporate overhead. So finance, enrollment, development, behavioral health, HR, all those kinds of things get allocated. And then you get a unit cost. So you can see our unit costs are fairly high. $250 a week for a preschool child in a classroom with 15. Obviously they go down as you look across the board, depending on the number of children. You can see 237, not big change. The big change is in your salaries. So depending on how what you're paying your teachers and your salaries. So, you know, our annual cost per child in this particular scenario would be $89.87 or a weekly cost of $172.82.
There's a question in the chat relative to what we're talking about right now. How long do centers need to be operating for a solid forecast of ratios? This individual opened in August. Given the year, you know, numbers are low due to COVID and fears.
You know, we're not looking at anything this year. We're not using any of our data this year. We were on March 11th, we were 97% enrolled, and on July 30th, we were 53% enrolled. And we just hit 65% this week. It's been so slow coming back. So our data is looking at about, you know, we've been looking at data where we've been collecting good data probably for about 5 years, but I think you would look at 2 years if you had 2 years that you could compare to each other. I just don't know how you compare 2020 to anything we've ever seen in terms of what's going on. And you're just gonna have to do your best guesstimating or estimating to make sure that you're gonna cover your costs. It's knowing how much it's gonna cost you.
Right. Is there a reason that you use the number of children rather than number of rooms? For example, this individual allocates the shared cost at equal amounts per classroom.
No, this is just there's no particular reason. We have multiple centers, and every center has a different number of classrooms and has a different number of ages. Some centers have infant and toddlers. Some centers have school age, but to us, it gives us a unit cost for that classroom based on the ages we're serving and the number of kiddos in that classroom. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just that this is the formula we use. And our finance director, well, I'm not going to say she likes it, because when I say, can we determine unit cost, she rolls her eyes like to the back of her head, but this is how we use, this is what we do.
Good. Another question. When you are in new home care, it's hard to supply data when applying for assistance. How do you get past these barriers?
Okay, say that to me again.
When you are in new home care, it's hard to supply data when applying for assistance. How do you get past these barriers?
And applying for assistance, I'm not clear.
I think it's maybe the programs that are becoming available, like the ones that we listed on the slide.
Okay. So I think we're going to see a change. Here's where I think we're going to see a change in our state with universal pre-K. I think that's where we're going to see a shift. Right now, I think there's some communities that have waivers, but for example, in El Paso County, we can't have CPP in family child care homes. They don't allow that. Our school districts don't allow that. But when we get universal pre-K, we're going to have to take a look at that model of how we really make it universal and have the dollars follow the child. Everywhere, that the money will follow the child. So with Head Start, it's going to be your Head Start grantee. We happen to have had a partnership with Head Start for 20 years, and we have Head Start slots in our family child care homes. I think that, you know, if there's ways, I really don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you that. If you have staff now, I think we're going to see more staffed family home networks coming along the way. And as you get into those staff networks, they're going to be able to support you and help you in doing some of that, finding how to apply, how to get resources. I certainly would say, no matter who I'm talking to, reach out to your early childhood councils. They're a wealth of information and support. They are truly going to help you get through the good times and the bad.
Very good. And earlier you had referenced EE. How do you think this will affect private preschools?
My hope, my best hope, is it will impact all of us, that every one of us will see the benefit of universal pre-K, that we truly will see a model that is embedded in our community, that is a mixed delivery service model, and that those dollars will follow children no matter where they attend, whether it's a preschool, a family childcare home, a church-based, a for-profit, a not-for-profit, a school. We have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of opportunity to get involved in that work in the state, and your early childhood council can connect you to it. But for those of us who are working on some of these work groups, you're hearing, if you were to listen in, you would hear strong advocacy from all of us, is that we make sure that these are family choice, and that the dollars follow the child, and that they are not siloed into particular areas. We really have got to make this universal and mixed delivery. And I pound that gavel or that drum no matter what table I'm sitting at, talking about universal pre-K.
Well, thank you so much. That looks like all of the questions in the chat. We have a few more minutes available for questions. If you would like to unmute yourself, you're welcome to verbally ask or enter it into the chat. And just to let you know that we have added some links into that chat as well.
Diane, this is Lisa Troutwine. I have a question about the ratio part of your staff per child. Do you serve children with special education concerns? And if you do, how does that play into your financial planning? Because that's always a game for me. You never know for sure till after they start that they have needs, and then it's costly to serve those children. So how do you handle that?
So mostly we handle this through our partnerships. So the way it works for us in El Paso County is we have 18 school districts. So it depends on what school district you're playing with. And we only play with 2. So we have a contract with 1 school district, and we do not have a contract to serve children with special needs, but we do serve children with speech and language. We serve children that have autism. And the way it works is that school district then contracts with our local Head Start grantee. And then that Head Start grantee provides the services on site for us, for the children enrolled in those classrooms. So our classrooms are partnership classrooms, and I refer to it as sort of the money is all braided and roped together, and sort of the sausage making that happens up in the finance department to get the dollars out the door. One of the things that we have done through grant, we're a not-for-profit, so we've been able to generate a lot of revenue for grants, and we have full-time behavioral health consultants on our staff. when we're fully enrolled, we have 3. They are all Pyramid Plus trained. All of our staff are Pyramid Plus trained. And then we coach for Pyramid into all of our classrooms. And so we have a lot of outside supports. And then we also help families get connected with resources. So they may contract or find a resource outside, and they'll come in and deliver services in our centers, in our classrooms for those children in concert with our behavior.
Board last night. Oh, I asked the question about home daycare.
Does that help a little bit, Lisa?
Yes, thank you very much. It's always a challenge, so.
It is. It's a big challenge, and we're going to see more and more of it. One of if I've learned anything in these last 9 months, and some days I'm not sure I've learned anything, and sometimes I think I've learned a lot, is that we certainly have to come out on the other side of this with a different system. The system we have is broken. The system we have is a single payer system, and it doesn't work. It's not covering our costs, and it's not having our staff our professionals to earn a living wage. And so we have got to come out of this on the other side. And there's so much research and studies and recommendations coming out about how to recreate the system better. And I would, again, the Opportunities Exchange website was up there. If you get on that website, the folks at OpEx are doing a lot of consulting around the country. They're partnering right now with Child Care Aware to look at how resource and referrals work and how we begin to think about automation, the child management systems, making sure they get into our centers. Colorado, like the rest of the country in March, we had no idea about supply and demand. We knew nothing. We didn't know how many slots we had. We didn't know what was open. We didn't know what was closed. We didn't know if we had infant care. We might have had our community data, but we didn't have really good data. And so we can't have that happen to us again. We absolutely cannot have that happen. We cannot be responsive to our businesses. We cannot be responsible to our families that have to go to work if we don't know what the supply is and what the demand is and how we meet that. And the workforce is changing, and I believe we're going to have to change with that. I believe that we're going to see more and more families working from home. So they're going to need a different kind of care in different kinds of ways. And we as an industry are going to have to start adapting and use if we have any right now, I think we're all kind of paralyzed, but if any innovative bones we have in our body, we're going to have to step up and be creative in how we deliver our services in a different kind of way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diane. Are there any other questions reaching kind of the end of our Q&A here with Diane, but anything else here before we wrap up? Wonderful. Again, Diane, thank you so much for your time and contributions to tonight.
I will see you in week 4, I think. I'm on a panel in week 4, so I'll see you all or hear you all or look at your names in a couple of weeks. So thank you for allowing me to be with you tonight. Andrew knows how to reach me, and if there's things I can offer in supports, I'd be happy to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you week 4.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. So next, we are going to, this is incorrect. We are not going to take a break. I apologize for getting your hopes up. Don't take a break on me yet. Next, we have an East Colorado SBDC consultant, Jesse Esparza. He's going to be discussing financial basics with us. So going to go over financial statement basics. We're going to go over profit margin, some revenue planning scenarios, and then provide some childcare budget resources as well. So Jesse has provided guidance and is involved with SBDCs across the state. So a counselor here, a great friend of the SBDC as a whole, counselor for the East Colorado SBDC, the Boulder and North Metro Small Business Development Centers. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass the torch here to Jesse Esparza and allow him to share his screen and present Financial Basics Part 1.
Okay, I think I've got this going, Andrew. Just hold on a little bit. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate kind of being here and giving you a little bit of information. I just think that I think Diane had a lot of good information. You know, it's really interesting these days with COVID. We have a lot of issues to deal with, and as Diane said, I think we have to be somewhat very careful about all the planning that we do as an immediate kind of process for financials, because we can't really gather a lot of this data that we want for the long term because of the situation. So I think there's a lot to think about as we work through this whole process of finances. And I have been looking for a really good management data resource for quite some time. I work with probably 6 or 7 early childhood programs, and I have for the past probably year. And that's probably one of the areas that I think is very hard to come by, given that need exists there. But let me tell you just a little bit about my past. What's kind of ironic is that 12, I think it was maybe now 13, I lost count. I retired as a principal of an elementary school. And in my school, I basically had a very kind of interesting dynamic. I had a special ed preschool program. I had an early childhood program, 3 to 4-year-olds. I had CPP, 1/3 of the, you know, the children were CPP kids. And what I had to do was I basically had to take my K-5 budget and mix it with the early childhood budget of all of these programs and make them work. And I think in a school system, it's a little bit different, but yet it's also difficult because all those dollars have to go to those specific children and also staff and program management. So again, you know, now coming into the private sector and looking at different kinds of programs, I think that there's still some real challenges out there. And as we begin to look at what is actually going to occur, I think that Diane is right, that universal preschool is really going to change the whole system. And so what I'm going to try to do tonight is just give you a real quick overview of how you can strengthen your fiscal management process of your preschool program and be able to at least give you something to work with for the long term. So please be very patient with this whole process of what you're doing now, because I know you're basically surviving, and things are just not normal relative to this year. So in planning, I think we have to look at 2021 first quarter, possibly second quarter, is also going to be real challenging. So what we do now is going to be very different as to what we do in the long term. So I want to be able to thank the National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance for this great picture. Isn't that great? I mean, it makes us realize what this is all about, and being able to really focus on financials. I know for some of you, it's kind of difficult. So let's just try to work through this. I'll start with the, I'll forego the quick quiz because we just don't have the time. But here are some of the things that I want to be able to cover tonight. I want to be able to at least give you some overview on the importance of the fiscal management process and the fact that we know you have a lot of passion, and it's not in the financials. I know that. I want to give you some cues in working with some of the numbers that are really essential to your financials, ways that you can maybe strengthen and establish some financial goals, because I think those are the key to the direction that you're going to take as you move through, say, 2021 and 2022. We'll look at tracking some of your financials, and I'll get some into that. Importance of projecting, as Diane was saying, I think those are really critical components that you've got to really take care of. in terms of the past, the present, and the future. And then, of course, documenting. If you don't document, basically, what are you going to look for? We are going to do a little group activity, and I'm hoping that you will engage in some of the opportunities to have discussions with your colleagues. We will look at some of the overview of some of the templates that I think basic to any financial component in terms of the opportunity to strengthen your fiscal management process. And then we'll look at some resources. I want to, we know that you're not accountants. And obviously, you got into this business to be more focused on the human development, as well as to really work with people and manage just the focus of some of those great minds that will be having great experiences through it, maybe in 20 years, 30 years from now. So what you're in here with is to really measure the social development of individuals. And so I know that that's the component that really is important to you. So when we talk about measuring and collecting data, we know that you want to collect data that is relative to, the caring of individuals, their health, their safety, and how to nurture those little individuals to become great human beings in the future. Yet, fiscal management is important. And so really, as a child care program, if you're a director of a large population school or a small one, by the way, I wanted to just kind of tell you that I was the one that sent out the survey to you all. And I've got about 25% back. So this is basically what I got. It looks like most of you, on the average, have been in business about 9 years. You use about 50% of you use QuickBooks, which is great. I'm glad to hear that. About 40% of you use the Excel sheets and forms, and about 10% really don't know what you're using other than you're working through some financials. Not untypical. I think that there's about 25% of you who, in terms of the capacity, are at about between 70 and 80%, which is kind of ironic because, with these difficult times, it just seems like it would be lower, but it seems like you're really working with preschool kids at a larger number than I thought. So on the average, I thought that was a good set of feedback that I got. I wanted to just get some details to be able to give you some quality information tonight. So that helped a lot. Thanks a lot for those of you that did send it. If you haven't, do not dismay. We still want your information because I want to be able to send that out to the consultants that are going to work with you. So that would really be helpful. So anyway, as we look at this whole process of finances, it is very important to budget your program on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. It's important to really establish a good set of resources, and then you need to nurture that kind of information. And you need to understand how to project your business on a long-term basis. So just looking at what's important, I think that I want to be able to give you some general information. Even though we know that you have passion for kids, we want you to be successful in this area of the finances because it's just as important when you're really trying to work with kids. So I want to engage you in kind of an interesting dynamic. in terms of what a successful childcare owner looks like. And so I'm going to have you read this, and I would like for you to open your mics and then give me some feedback. I'll tell you, this is a very true story about an individual that I've been working with for quite some time. And it just seems that I've been a bit perplexed at and trying to figure out if in fact she is successful. But I'll let you kind of look through this, and I hope that all of you can read this. Obviously, the name has been changed. This individual has been in business quite some time.
Hey, Jesse, we're getting some feedback. Is there any way we can make the slides a little larger for the group?
They're good?
Thanks, Jesse.
So
I'm
Gina's
not seeing it
You're not
either.
seeing
This
it?
is Lisa.
Is everybody seeing it? Are you seeing it?
I'm not seeing anything either.
Okay. Well, I guess it's not going to work. So, well, let me tell you the story about this individual. Jane has been in business for 12 years. She started in 2008 with her first child care center program. She reached her capacity at 50 children the first year. And then she started, after about 2 years, she started another child care program in 2012. In 1 year, she reached her capacity of 50 children at that child care site. And then she has a great staff, and then began to work a new set of programs and opened a third child care center. Her revenue is about $200,000 per year in all of the three centers. She has paid, in 2016, she paid $35,000 in taxes to the IRS. In 2016, she ended up paying $48,000 in taxes to the IRS. And then in 2018, she ended up paying another $48,000 in taxes, and she is now on an installment for the $48,000 this last year. She tells me, she works about 10 to 12 hours a day, and she is very happy doing what she's doing. So the question really is, do you think that she is a successful child care owner? Or do you think that she's not successful? What do you guys think? Give me some feedback.
Jesse, quick question for you. 25% of her gross income to taxes? Question?
Yes, about 25% or 30.
Regine says she needs a new accountant.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
So this is Lisa. It doesn't sound to me like she's taking advantage of all of the opportunities that she has for not having to pay that kind of income tax.
Okay. But 3 centers, I tell you, that's amazing to me. She tells me she wants to retire in about 5 years. She has no money to retire on, other than the 3 centers. What would you have done differently? That's a good point, Lisa. Probably looking at different costs, right? putting together a plan that might give her some additional opportunities to buy some equipment, maybe start a retirement plan that would help her at least gain some of that IRS money back to her in the long term. What else?
I think she's not successfully financially she's not successful, but she's happy.
She's happy. There you go. That's amazing. And that's what she seems like. She's very happy. Every time I see her, she can understand why I'm trying to get her to focus more on the financials. And the other thing is that she has not seen her accountant for 5 years, but has actually been on the phone with her accountant once a year. So I think, again, I want to just emphasize that those are some of the realities, I think, when we think in terms of success. She does feel successful. And I think trying to give her a little bit more support is part of the financial end of it, which is the whole, the moral of the story here is she probably needs to take some classes in finances because in 5 years, if she retires, she wants to at least take some of that money that she's given to the IRS to put it back in her pocket. She does not own the buildings. She basically rents the buildings. It probably would be a good idea for her to transition and pivot to buy a building rather than to rent these buildings. So those kinds of things I think are probably normal when it comes to individuals who have more of a care for, as we said, the passion for kids than the finances. So again, I want to just really emphasize that we're looking at, some new, can everybody see this slide?
Yes, Jesse.
Oops. So strengthening the fiscal management really means building the projections and actuals at the same time, and being able to actually try to look at those projections and comparing them onto the actual financial information. Also, when you think in terms of building and rebuilding budgets, it's very critical to work with all of those components because you're going to always continue to build and rebuild. And that's what real budgets are built for, to continue to rebuild them. It's important to use the combination of data to make this information meaningful and also to be able to make decisions. And that's where you get the whole process of being able to set up your goals. Because with all of the data that you collect and then you begin to interpret, that really begins to give you a good focus on how you're going to work this center. Obviously, one of the critical positions for a center is to be able to know how to generate added income. And if you have the ability to add additional income besides the FTE, the children, that actually helps the whole concept of your center. And there's different programs. Some of those centers that are nonprofit have the ability to work, through grants, donations. More of the private ones don't have that advantage. So there's other ways that are very critical for the centers to try to determine some added income. Goal-driven financials are also a very important concept of management and strengthening the fiscal management process. So we know that as long as you continue to plan, then things get better and you're able to at least work through and continue to strengthen your fiscal management of your programs. So working with your data is very important. And that's probably one of the components that I think, as Diane was saying, to be able to establish the enrollment-based full-time equivalent of the FTEs and then begin to define them based on all of what they're going to need and come up with, the daily cost. But then you also have the whole issue of turnover of enrollment of children. You have to put into perspective. And as you begin to establish accounts receivable and those individuals that are not paying or that are delaying their payments is another variable that you have to work with. Learning to make decisions based on those financial data is really, really critical and important. So how do you analyze that business cost? That's really the piece that I think is important to work with as you begin to work with that, with all your numbers. So once you begin to collect data, you can learn to read and interpret those financials, and then you can begin to establish a budget. So as you work with the numbers and the financials, it would be important for you to forecast the statements, to be able to plan ahead, and then establish that with the cash flow statements that you have, and also be able to work with your data that is the profit and loss statements. And of course, then you have balance sheet. So these are the tools that ultimately are really giving you the opportunity to actually learn to interpret and begin to establish your budgets. The other, I think, component that is critical is just the opportunity to understand how to work with the tax deductions and maximizing those costs. And this is the example I was using with Jane. I mean, it's just important that the more they read those detailed tools of the cash flow, the P&Ls and the balance sheets, that they're able then to take some of those some of the revenue and what might be a profit and turn it into some other forms and not have to be paying such high taxes. So when you think about looking at all of that data, it really is about you developing a financial goal. And that's very, very important and very critical to a center. We know that without goals, it's very limited to your longevity as a business, no matter what kind of business you are. So setting financial goals will in fact help you drive forward your childcare program. So how do you do that? Well, it's important that you begin to, as I said, project the needed revenue And then you break down that in terms of per quarter. The other strategy is also to look at breaking down that information by season, so that there are some peaks and valleys that you're going to be dealing with, but you're beginning to establish some very effective strategies that can also be, some strategies are based on routine. Break down by season. And then you will also have the possibility of looking at, for some of you, the child care grants that come up. If you have some of those, you will do some fundraising and any possibility of donations. All of those begin to help in terms of at least defining the projections that you're going to need for 1 year. But very critical to project and be able to look at the big picture in order that then you have some data that you can work with. So once you have some of that data, you can begin to project the expenditures that you're going to take on for 1 year. So for example, I think Diane mentioned it, the staff's needs, the services, your projections, the staff benefits, professional development is very important in centers, administrative costs, the physical facility. I mean, I think those are all components that you've got to be able to separate as you move through this process of defining and gathering your data. Equipment and furnishings all can be separated, and that too is something that probably needs to be addressed on a quarterly basis as the need arises based on the number of children that are coming in each season or quarter. And then of course the consumable supplies. And that really gives you the opportunity to define the delivery of the day-to-day childcare program as a projection. And then you want to be able to think of the possible variables that you will need to overcome. As I said, this is important. And when I'm talking about the projecting, really at this point in time, if you're going to start projecting, which I think you should be doing for 2021, obviously Q1 is going to be very, very important because it is going to have some external variables, such as a downturn in economy, some unemployment. Parents are going to be unemployed. We're still going to be dealing with possible stay-home policies. So those things, I think, will continue to work. And so that's another reason to look at the external variable that you may not have as much control in terms of, say, the first quarter, the second quarter, and even, for the entire 2021 year. Think about the internal variables that are confronting you. So when you begin to develop this goal, this is one of the components where you probably have a little bit more knowledge about your center. Look at your facility. Is it going to need some upkeep? Some of your furniture, is it going to need some upgrading? All of these become internal variables that are going to confront you and important for you to begin to develop a plan for it. Draft several scenarios that you can think of that you can actually use. Possibly, option A, option B, option C will at least give you the opportunity to work through some of the possibilities that you're going to have to be dealing with. So once you begin to work with that information, then you can really begin to develop that past data that may have been consistent that will be able to be used as a combination with all of this other data that you're doing to find your growth rate, as well as what you're going to need for 2021, 2022, and possibly beyond. You know, there's other factors that are going to be, you're going to be dealing with in the wintertime, are weather, and also some of the heating costs. Some of those become external as well as sometimes internal situations. I think it's important to define and refine and try to look at the first draft as a set of information that you're going to use to have the ability to move to another draft. You may need to create maybe 3, 4, 5 different drafts in order for you to actually come up with something that's reliable to you for, say, 2021 and 2022. And you're going to continue to gather more data. And ultimately, you're probably working with some very skewed data from the last quarter of 2020, but it's data that, will it help you, or will you need to just move to the 2019 data, given what we're dealing with in 2020. So really, when you think about the process, it's really continuing to refine the data and refine the goals that you have started, and to make sure that you keep establishing some deadlines for this draft that you're creating, so that by December, say 2020, you have something that you're going to have the ability to work with for 2021, at least for the first quarter. I think it's going to be important that you not try to create this entire goal for 2021, just by the mere fact of what we're dealing with in this pandemic period. So it would be good and very important to prepare to make changes after you have completed each of the quarters, because that is going to help in creating more significant information as you work through each of this gathered data that you've gotten. So in other words, what you're doing is you're taking the big picture and you're making it more refined and defined to the smaller quarters, to the smaller components that you're able to work with. So therein lies, now you have the ability to, you have a budget that you can create. And so why does budgeting matter? Because once you begin to collect that data, and all the necessary decisions that you're starting to make will help you manage and be able to work with the type of spending that you're going to need for the future of your center. Remember that a budget is really a form of a projection that you're really creating. And it will be ever be actually something that's going to stand still. It's going to be an ever-changing and something that you'll need to continue to review and actually continue to work through on a month-to-month basis to find what's causing the difference, and then work with all the variables that are internal and external. Very important. So I'll show you a the child care center operating budget in just a little bit when we do the resources. I'm going to show you this, and then I think we'll be ready for our small groups. I hope you guys can see this.
The provider cost of quality calculator, which
Hey,
we'll
Jesse.
refer to as.
Can you see it?
Jesse, that's not showing up. If you could just escape that window that you're currently on and bring up the YouTube window, we'd be able to see that.
Okay.
Thanks.
CQC is a free, publicly accessible, and easy-to-use web-based tool that calculates the cost of quality for a childcare center or a childcare home. The intent of the PCQC is to help state policymakers and other stakeholders understand the costs associated with delivering high-quality childcare. The tool can estimate revenues and expenses at different levels of quality and demonstrate whether there is a gap between the cost of providing quality care and the income or revenue a provider is able to earn. Knowing the size of that gap at different quality levels can help inform the design of policies, financial incentives, and supports for childcare providers. Over the next few minutes, you'll learn how to access resources to support your use of the PCQC and how to enter data. So let's get started. To access the PCQC, you'll go to the Child Care Technical Assistance Network website and click on the Provider Cost of Quality Calculator link. Once you've entered a username and password, you can begin using the tool. To save time, it's a good idea to use the data collection template to gather all of your state's unique information before you start entering data into the PCQC. You can see that these fields to the right show that, for some elements, default values are included. You can use these default values, which are based on national and state level data, or include data that more accurately represents a provider in your state. We recommend that you read the user guide before entering any data and refer to it frequently. It's accessible here under Resources and includes detailed instructions on using the PCQC. Once you've read the user guide and collected your data, you'll enter provider level data in each of these tabs across the top for a center or a home. You'll notice that there's an expense and revenue statement at the top of every page. As you enter information into the tool, the expense and revenue statement is continuously updated to reflect these changes. You begin by selecting your state or territory and the descriptors for your state or territory's age group categories. You'll then proceed to enter cost drivers for a center, including non-personnel and personnel cost drivers. On the next tab, you'll enter the cost drivers for a home. You can then begin entering the cost and revenue data related to higher levels of quality, including salaries, ratios, group size, and additional cost drivers. Each of these elements can be entered for each level of your state or territory's QRIS. You'll also enter information related to quality level for homes. Next, you'll enter reimbursement rates and tuition rates for homes and centers for each age level and QRIS level. And now you've arrived at the site profile page, the most exciting portion of the tool. At this point, you have just a few more fields to complete, and then you can easily change all of these elements to see how they affect net revenue. For example, the type of care, quality level, number of classrooms, percent of subsidy, and program efficiency. After you've created a scenario for a center or a home at different quality levels, you can create additional scenarios. Instead of starting from scratch, you can select Save As and retitle the scenario. As you create scenarios, you may find it useful to compare the data elements of each scenario. To do this, click on Download Results. You can view or print your scenarios here. This provides a good way to keep track of the data that you've entered for your scenarios. Additional resources on the PCQC are available under the Resources tab, including 2 issue briefs that provide examples of how specific cost drivers impact a provider's net revenue. If you have additional questions, you can email OCCQualityCenter@icfi.com. We hope that this demonstration has helped you understand how to use the PCQC. You can send feedback from any page of the PCQC, which will help us make future improvements. We hope you'll be in touch.
So everyone will have the opportunity to download the PCQC program during the breaks. So I'll give you that opportunity. It's really a good tool for utilizing to create budgets and establish a good financial program. Okay, so at this point, you'll see that we're going to create 2 groups. What I'd like for you to do is just start in each of the breakout rooms. Just look at the information that you have in your child care program and start thinking. It doesn't have to be anything very sophisticated, but if you can start putting together the data, or at least anything that you have that will give you some information about how you're going to operate in 2021, and be able to begin to look at some projections, be able to establish some quarterly projections for 2021. As I said, look at the first quarter, because I'm sure that's going to be much different than the second quarter, and the second quarter is going to be much different than the third and fourth quarter. So it's going to be important for you to start looking at data based on a quarter system and maybe even a monthly system in 2021, due to some of our external variables that we're dealing with this as we move to this year. And then if you have time, just go ahead and download or get registered with the PCQC program.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. So as Jesse mentioned, we are going to be breaking you out here into breakout rooms. Wanted to let everybody kind of stretch their legs though and get up, take a quick break just before we do bust out into these group sessions. So I'm going to go ahead and let everyone take just a quick 10-minute break. We'll get you assigned here to your individual breakout rooms. East Colorado SBDC consultants will be facilitating in each of these breakout rooms. And so go ahead and take a quick 10-minute break. We will jump back here at 7:50 on the dot into those breakout rooms at 7:50. Okay, hey there everyone. Just ending up the breakout rooms here. So those are going to be closing down here in the next 90 seconds. Everyone will then be joining Jesse here for part 2 of Financial Basics. And I just want to thank everybody for their participation in those breakout groups. I just think that was such a wonderful time for us all to get into smaller groups and really open up the conversation. And I hate to fall back on this, but rising tides raise all ships, right? And just us learning from one another and just hearing the dialogue and the back and forth from all of you was just very encouraging. So if anybody made a friend or wants me to provide an introduction, obviously I'm respectful of all of your contact information, but would be happy to facilitate an introduction so you can ask more questions and learn from one another as well.
Andrew, how much time do I have left?
Jesse, it looks like we got most of our participants trickling back here. The other breakout room is closing here in about 45 seconds.
And how much time do I have left for the last part?
Oh, excellent. Yes, sir. Yeah, you got about 20 minutes. So 20 minutes for part 2, and then we'll do a quick wrap up and give everyone the rest of their evening back.
Okay, I'll wait.
And Jesse, I think everybody has joined us from the other breakout room, so ready to start part 2 when you are.
And Andrew, I'm gonna I think I'm in the green area, so I'll be able to show my my resources here. I want to just make sure. So
excellent.
Here I go. Let's see. Tell me if you can see this one. Can you see it?
No, Jesse, it doesn't look like we can. So if you could just escape back from the full screen.
So
Thank
it's not
you.
going to work. Okay, so I'll just have to do this manually to go get into the you can see that, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So these are just, can I start now or you want to, is everybody back?
Yes, sir. We are all here ready to roll. So thanks, Jesse. This is Financial Basics Part 2.
Yep. So basically, this is more than anything, just some resources and just some example of some financials that you have the ability to access from us. So I think if you can just talk to Jen, get the process going, and some of your consultants that you're working with will also have this information and much more from the resource area that we have available for you. So this is just basically a cash flow projection for centers, and it gets into some definitive information about how to work with some of the information that I had given you earlier. You know, the do's and don'ts, be able to give you some prompts in terms of what might be essential for you to take into consideration as you begin to work with some of these cash flows. As I had mentioned earlier, I know that 50% of you, about 50% of you probably are using Excel sheets, and these are and can be turned into Excel sheets and be able to utilize them in your programs. Those of you that already have QuickBooks, great, because some of this information probably you don't need. But you may want to be able to start with scratch paper on some of this stuff when you're starting to do projections in terms of what you can do with it. So kind of consider that, being able to utilize it in ways that you want. I mean, you can just use this and eliminate the information and be able to start from scratch, get rid of all of that and be able to add it because it's got all the values in it already set up for you. So that's one that you can utilize. Another one is going to be the get out manually. Sorry, guys. Another resource is the Child Care Center annual operating budget. This one really, I think, is helpful because it helps you look at some of the actual versus projections right on the same sheet. And it starts with, you know, the child care workers, and it begins to also look at some of the essential needs in individuals that are in the centers. And then it looks at the benefits, and you can add those through on an actual as well as projections. And then the professional development needs, administrative, all of these. And so for some of those small centers, this can really be helpful as you begin to set up your projections. And another point of reference is that you have the ability to just use this as scratch, as draft, and build them and rebuild them and be able to save as you work through the process. So that's another probably good set of information that some of you have the ability to use. This is a sheet that will provide you with at least the revenue and expense in details in terms of the revenue that you are bringing in, as well as the expenses that you are expending as you operate on a monthly basis, and also as you need to put in all of the details to the kind of percentages that you're dealing with relative to your center. So it does at least give you some opportunities to look at the various different components of the child care programs, and also the hours, and whether you're working even if you're in a home or if in fact you're in a site, at a brick and mortar. So this is a good example of some of those variables that might work for you. It also has a really good mileage expense summary sheet that probably some of you could use in terms of some of the programs, delivery or pickups that you might have, some of the vans that you use, those kinds of things. This is an annual budget, an operating for child care center. Again, it's just a way to build your annual budget, that the expenses that you incur, you can use it pretty much as again, a draft to be able to look at your weekly, your monthly, and your yearly as you build out some of your costs in terms of the child care program. Very basic, real simple. So I think this will work. I'm going to try to, we're going to go to some resources that, let's see if it works with, oops. So does everybody see that website or not?
No, Jesse, don't see the actual website.
Okay, well, that's not going to work either. So let me go to the manual approach here. This is the website, and again, you'll have the opportunity to get all of this, the web addresses of a nonprofit opportunities exchange program. It's a very good website. It has child care management software. It has the different kinds of marketing-based pricing, reinventing childcare for different programs, rebuilding your programs. I mean, there's some good resources here that you can access through this opportunities exchange. And of course, most of all of you, I'm not going to show you the, because all of you, I'm hoping, have access to the Colorado preschool program website. If you don't, it's a really good, really good website, but I can't imagine you don't. There's I think another nonprofit called Early Learning Ventures. Maybe some of you have accessed that already. I'll show you the website. It's a Colorado-based program. Again, Early Learning Ventures provides some resources. It's a nonprofit, fairly new, provides various different kinds of resources: business development, leadership development, professional development, and community development. You guys are so patient that I have to do this manually. Wow, I'm impressed. Oops, wrong one. So let's see. So I'm going to go to the very end here because I think most of this other stuff, I want to show you where I got some of these resources. Oops. Yep. So this is it's called templates.net. It provides a lot of free templates that many of you probably could utilize and use. It specifically is focused on some daycare, but you also you can make these, you can have some of these forms for the other components of your daycare's invoice receipts. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that you can actually create your own logo onto. It's set up on Word, and you can transfer it over to a PDF, and any of these different kinds of download approaches. They're very good, and they're very, I think they're accessible. You get it once in a while, you'll get a ad for, buying and subscribing for more, but you don't have to. A good set of information for those of you that are always looking for templates that will fit your programs, and you can have them onto, you can put your logos onto it. It's really good website. So just something that you can, it's called templates.net. Okay, Andrew, I think.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much for that, Jesse. And again, too, I just want to thank all of our presenters here this evening, Diane Price, Jesse Esparza, Suzanne Gallegos. Thank you so much for your time and participation in tonight's workshop. So definitely want to make sure we get you out of here before 9. So want to just briefly discuss kind of next steps, wrap up this evening, and then go over homework and kind of expectations, and preparation for next week. So I'm going to keep Jesse and Jen here kind of on the horn. I'm going to let I'm going to let Jen briefly discuss, let Jesse briefly discuss kind of the financial activities that he'd like for you to walk through in preparation with your SBDC consultant.
Thanks, Andrew. I think it's going to be important that as you begin to work with your consultants, that you at least have some of this kind of information ready. If you, as I was talking about getting some of the data and working with your numbers, we're going to need to find out what and where you're going. So if you can have some of your cash flow details, if you can have the number of kids that you have and where your capacity is, if you can give us information relative to the different variables internal that you're dealing with, and the obviously the external variables that you're dealing with in your area, that is really going to be essential, that then we can begin to help really decipher some of the issues that you're dealing with and help you build a budget based on some of the information that you're giving us. And I would say any other questions that you have in relationship to the operations, the management, and or even the marketing would help as we work through that. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. Are there any questions on that while we have the group open? Any questions just about kind of what Jesse's talking about or homework for everyone? Okay, excellent. And then Jen, so week 3, we're going to be discussing HR considerations and legal considerations for your operation. And obviously this will include hiring and job descriptions. And so Jen will briefly discuss kind of the assignment and what's needed in preparation for next week as well.
Yeah, so next week we're very excited to have some wonderful presenters talking about changes that are happening in terms of regulations for HR and other HR strategies for your child care center. But we are going to be doing one activity that just is going to basically look at your job descriptions and how we can use some simple strategies to make them more attractive as you are looking to attract talent and just staff to your center. So I'd say just pull out the last job description that you used in terms of your hiring process and make sure that you have that on hand with you next week. The other thing, and I may be jumping ahead, Andrew, so I apologize if I'm doing that, but if you have not had a chance to fill out the survey in terms of the market research report requests, please fill that out. We actually use one of our partners to pull that information, and they have about a 15 business day turnaround. So the longer you delay filling out that survey and getting that information to us, the longer it's just going to take for us to get you those market research reports. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, please do.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. And that is something I did want to reiterate is in order to receive professional development for this course, which we're really excited that we are able to offer that, is you are required, to, complete these homework activities as well as set the one-on-one appointments with your financial or SBDC consultant. And so really encourage you to complete those activities just to make sure that you are able to fulfill the requirements for the professional development credits as well. So if we could have that completed by next week, just the financial assessments that Jesse had mentioned, as well as the job description assignment, I will be sending that out via email for everyone, so you don't have to go searching for that or what's required. But if we could complete that along with the surveys that were sent out in week 1, that would be very much appreciated. As I mentioned, don't forget, like I said, your consultants have been emailing you, trying to set these one-on-ones up. I mentioned it may have gone to spam or your junk mail, so please be sure to check for that. Will be coming from an @EastColoradoSBDC.com web address if you are curious, or if you see something like that come across your inbox. As we mentioned last week, please join our newsletter. You can text East Coast News to 22828 for latest updates, any SBDC workshops or community events that we will be a part of. We definitely encourage you to follow us on our social media channels as well, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as LinkedIn for updates and new news regarding the East Colorado SBDC. And again, if we'll leave this open here for the next 10, 15 minutes just to answer any follow-up questions, make sure everyone has a clear path moving forward for next week. But we will be meeting same time, same place, next session, Tuesday, November 17th. So I will leave you all with that. And like I said, gonna just leave this slide open just so you know a little bit more about the SBDC, what we can offer you and your facility as a whole outside of these workshops and trainings. And then if there are any questions, myself and the SBDC team will stay on the line here for the next, like I said, 5-10 minutes, answer any questions and point you in the right steps for next week. Thank you all for joining us. And if you want to leave here for the rest of the evening, you're more than welcome to. If there are any questions, we're happy to answer them now.
Jan, this is Lori. Did you see Regina wanted to know who her consultant was?
Regina, I'm going to go ahead and send you an email with your consultant's contact information, just so you can double check. I'm sure they've been in reach, but like we said, maybe spam filters have accidentally caught those emails. And if anyone else would like to receive that, I guess please type a request in the chat box, and I'll go through these and send those emails out.
I do have one question. My name's Wendy, and I missed last week, and so I didn't have. I'm going to do the listen to the recording. So do I need to do that before doing the survey? Because I didn't understand the survey.
It certainly will make more sense, Wendy, but basically we're going to pull 2 market research reports for you, and that's what the survey basically does, is it identifies who your target markets are, your customer segments, and what sort of drive time range around your center you want to pull demographic and psychodemographic reports for. So those are free as part of this course. And that will just give you a little bit more information in terms of your potential market size and how many children in the age range are out there in your territory.
Okay. One more question. So then it has Tamara James and then your answer.
Tamara James. Oh, sorry. Could you please read that one again? I don't have it.
So it has like email, and then it's untitled, and then it says Tamara James, your answer.
You know, Wendy, I think we may have sent you the wrong one. Let me send you a link with that, because that's not sounding like the correct survey. So I will email you that, and just keep an eye out tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And Wendy, just so you know as well, for future reference, those videos, the link was sent out in an email, like I said, Friday and previously today with week's 1 link. I will include that for everyone as well following today. I'll include a link for week 1 as well as this week's link, so you guys are all able to review the video and catch up if need be.
Thank you. Yes, I did receive the email. Thank you.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions or anything that's pressing for anybody at this moment while we have consultants on the line?
I just wanted to say on that survey, I think everybody said Tamara James, and we just all assumed to put our name there is what we did.
Awesome.
Oh.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying. There must have been just a typo or something on that initial survey. Thanks.
Yes.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, like I said, I will email the group this recording as well as the slides and the resources that were mentioned in today's presentations. And like I said, I very, very much want to provide any introduction. So if you did make any friends or find connections in today's breakout sections, happy to provide an introduction. So please feel free to email me directly, and I can play matchmaker, so to speak, I guess, with the individuals who might be interested in connecting. So please feel free to email me if you would like that information or for me to make a connection.
Hey, Andrew, quick note. Please don't close this out for everyone. I need to double check these chats to make sure I've got those notes. So just a quick note for you.
Wonderful, cool. And then just as a quick side note, while we have everybody, we are going to be touching base on marketing on week 4 here during this Leading Edge workshop. And this is an individual from Constant Contact who will really be deep diving into email marketing and some of the best practices there. We are doing a one-off course the week thereafter, and this is really going to be for the childcare industry specifically, and it's going to revolve around social media marketing specifically. So if you want to find out how to better market your practice, better market your facility on social media using channels like Facebook and Instagram, please feel free to register for that workshop. We're doing it essentially for this group, so we'd love to have you be a part of that as well if you guys have time on December 8th. Happy to send that link over as well in the email just as additional resources and upcoming opportunities. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your time here. I know it is a long 3 hours, but really appreciate all the feedback, all the engagement that we got tonight. Hope you guys learned as much as I did. And then, like I said, if there are any questions or if you'd like for me to facilitate any introductions, I'm happy to do so. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'll go ahead and include that in the chat now. And then we'll just leave this open for the next 5 to 10 minutes if there are any questions. If not, feel free to enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you for joining us tonight. Great job in the breakout sessions today, team. That was awesome. I really liked the engagement. I thought people really opened up in those. That was neat.
Good way to break up some of the information, I think.
Yeah, that was good. I thought that they really, I think the breakout groups really, they got to talking. I was glad to hear that.
Absolutely, yeah. Learned a lot just from.
Hey, while Hessie, are you still there? I just wanted to say hi and shout out to her. How are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
Good.
Congratulations, Missy. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're feeling pretty good, but tired, I bet, huh?
Yeah, tired all day, but otherwise I'm pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Hey, Hessie, when you're ready, you know what? Just think about this. Me and you can do one of these in Spanish. Think about it.
That's what I was putting on my notes here, is like things too, like, you know, how to put it all together in Spanish, and, you know, how are we going to market, you know.
We're going to have to utilize you all or both of you for the translation aspect of this. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's fine. That's no problem. I guess my concern is just how are we going to get those businesses, you know, to, you know, join the Zoom, and especially that I know there's like a lot of like home businesses.
Yeah. They're out there. I tell you, Greeley, Eaton, all of these little towns, man, they're out there. I can tell you. There's no doubt about it. So
yeah, we'll definitely have to get together and see how we can brainstorm.
Good idea.
And market these type of webinars. Hey, Andrew, can you send me the slides and the recording for last week? I didn't get them on Friday.
Yeah, I will most definitely do that. That's not a problem.
And then today's too, because I was having connection issues. So
Yeah, no worries. Guys, I'm sorry. It takes my computer forever. These videos are like 2 hours long. It takes like a day to upload and then another day to upload. It's insane how long it takes. 2 hours of video really slows my computer down.
You guys, this is Ruth Ann from licensing. If there's not any licensing questions, I'll go ahead and go.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to join next week as well.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was very interesting.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
All right, guys. Well,
All righty.
I think we'll sign off then too, but we're gonna chat tomorrow afternoon then a little bit.
We will recap, Lori. Yeah, thank you so
Okay.
much. Jen, you need anything else from me or need me to keep this open for you to gather any other information?
Yeah, I'm emailing those like 3 or 4 people that requested it. So as long as I can just keep this chat up for the next like 5 minutes, Andrew, I'll be good.
Cool.
What time are we on tomorrow, Andrew?
Let me look, Jesse. Let me look.
All right, well, I'll see you guys hopefully pretty soon, or talk to you guys soon.
Awesome.
Bye.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. I have 2 o'clock.
Yep, 2 o'clock. Yep.
Okay.
All righty.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
We will see you then.
Jesse, thank you. You've done a ton of work for this.
Well, I wish I
Thank you
could have
so
been better.
much.
Glitches, technology glitches. Oh my God.
Oh,
No.
yeah, but you had the contents, what's important. So thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.